Have you ever witnessed an act of heroism so pure it rewrote the laws of the wild? When a mountain gorilla risked everything to save a baby lion from a giant anaconda's crushing coils, it should have been the end of the story. But what happened next? When the entire lion pride witnessed this impossible rescue, defied every rule of nature, and created a bond so extraordinary that wildlife experts still struggle to believe the footage is real. The Kisangani Conservation Reserve sprawls across the volcanic highlands where the Democratic Republic of Congo meets Rwanda. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Creating a unique ecosystem where mountain forests descend into river valleys that shouldn't exist at this altitude. Ancient geological upheavals have carved deep gorges through the landscape, creating isolated pockets where species from different continents have somehow found themselves sharing the same impossible territory through decades of human intervention and natural adaptation. Massive mahogany trees tower above winding waterways fed by underground springs, while volcanic rock formations create natural bridges and hidden caves that house an extraordinary collection of displaced wildlife. This remote sanctuary serves as a final refuge for animals that can never return to their original homes. Victims of trafficking, climate change, and human expansion who have formed their own unique ecosystem beyond the reach of traditional scientific classification. What you're about to witness isn't just another rescue story. It's about the moment when courage transcends every barrier nature has created between species. This isn't about territorial disputes or survival instincts, but something far more profound that occurs when the bonds of compassion prove stronger than millions of years of evolutionary programming. In this hidden valley where the impossible has become routine, an act of heroism would unfold that challenged the very definition of family, loyalty, and sacrifice. The convergence of forest and river creates microclimates where mountain gorillas navigate alongside creatures that should never exist in their world. Here, in this geological anomaly where water flows uphill through underground caverns and ancient trees grow from seemingly impossible angles, the laws of nature bend to accommodate relationships that rewrite every rule of wildlife behavior. On this particular morning, as mist rose from the warm springs that feed the valley's network of streams, an encounter was about to unfold that would create ripple effects throughout the global conservation community. What began as a single act of desperate courage would trigger a chain reaction so extraordinary that it would forever change how we understand the capacity for gratitude, recognition, and unity in the animal kingdom. In the misty highlands of Kisangani lived Bakari, a magnificent silverback mountain gorilla whose gentle nature had made him a beloved guardian to countless orphaned animals throughout the reserve. The 450-pound giant possessed an unusual combination of protective strength and nurturing compassion that had earned him legendary status among the sanctuary's human caretakers. His distinctive silver saddle caught the morning light as he moved through his territory with the quiet dignity of a natural leader who understood that true power lay in protection, not domination. Bakari's massive hands, capable of crushing bone, were more often seen delicately grooming smaller creatures or sharing food with the reserve's most vulnerable residents. His dark eyes held depths of intelligence that suggested an almost human understanding of suffering and the need for healing. Years of serving as surrogate father to dozens of orphaned animals had developed within him an extraordinary sensitivity to distress calls that transcended species boundaries. Several kilometers away, in the river valleys where the terrain opened into savanna-like clearings, lived Amali's pride, a family of African lions whose presence in this mountainous region represented one of conservation's most successful relocation efforts. Amali, the pride's magnificent matriarch, led her family with the wisdom of a ruler who had successfully adapted to terrain that challenged every instinct her species had evolved over millennia. Her mate Django was a powerful male whose dark mane spoke to years of successful leadership, while their extended family included several adult females and their most precious member, little Tendai, a 3-month-old cub whose playful spirit and fearless curiosity brought joy to the entire pride despite the constant vigilance required to keep him safe in their challenging environment. What made this pride extraordinary wasn't just their adaptation to mountain life, but their apparent understanding that survival in Kisangani required cooperation with species they would never encounter in traditional lion territory. The reserve's unique ecosystem had taught them that isolation meant death, while alliance could mean the difference between thriving and merely surviving in this land of endless surprises. The first warning came as a subtle shift in the valley's natural harmony that Bakari's sensitive ears detected long before any visual confirmation of danger. The silverback was peacefully foraging near the thermal springs when the familiar symphony of forest sounds began to fragment. Birds that had been chattering in the canopy fell silent in a wave that spread outward from the river's edge, while the constant hum of insects grew sporadic and then ceased entirely. Bakari's massive head lifted from his morning meal, his nostrils flaring as he tested the air for scents that didn't belong to the peaceful rhythm of sanctuary life. His years of protecting orphaned animals had developed within him an almost supernatural ability to detect threats, and every instinct was now screaming that something predatory was moving through the thermal pools with deadly intent. Meanwhile, down in the valley clearing, Amali's pride was experiencing their own moment of unease as they rested in the morning shade of a massive boulder formation. The matriarch's amber eyes scanned the landscape with growing concern as she noticed the unusual behavior of the various prey animals that shared their territory. Antelope that normally grazed peacefully near the water's edge had retreated to higher ground, while the colorful birds that usually announced every movement in the valley had gone ominously quiet. Little Tendai, oblivious to the mounting tension, had wandered from the pride's protective circle to investigate the interesting patterns of light dancing on the thermal pools. The young cub's natural curiosity had drawn him to the water's edge, where steam rising from the naturally heated springs created fascinating swirls and shadows that captivated his playful attention. What none of them realized was that the thermal springs' complex network of underwater caves and heated channels had attracted a predator perfectly adapted to aquatic hunting, a massive anaconda that had found its way into the reserve through the underground river systems that connected Kisangani to distant waterways. The giant serpent had been tracking the scent trails of the valley's inhabitants for days, learning their patterns and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. What emerged from the steaming thermal pool was a creature of primordial nightmare, a massive green anaconda over 30 feet in length, its muscular body thick as a tree trunk and glistening with the mineral-rich water of the heated springs. This ancient predator had somehow navigated the underground river systems to reach Kisangani, bringing with it hunting skills perfected in the deepest reaches of the Amazon basin. The serpent's attack was swift and calculated with terrifying precision. Little Tendai, fascinated by his own reflection in the warm water, had no warning before the anaconda exploded from beneath the surface like a living missile of muscle and scales. The massive snake's jaws gaped open to reveal a mouth capable of swallowing prey much larger than the tiny lion cub, while its powerful coils moved with fluid grace to encircle its victim. The young cub's terrified roar pierced the morning air as 28 feet of pure predatory power wrapped around his small golden form. Tendai's desperate struggles only seemed to excite the anaconda's hunting instincts, each movement causing the serpent's coils to tighten with methodical precision, designed to crush the life from its prey while avoiding damage to its own vulnerable body. The attack's location made rescue nearly impossible. The anaconda had positioned itself in the deepest part of the thermal pool, where the heated water created a natural killing chamber that eliminated most escape routes. The serpent's body blocked access from 3 sides, while the steep rocky banks made approach from the remaining direction treacherous for any potential rescuer. Amali's roars of maternal anguish echoed across the entire valley as she witnessed her youngest cub disappearing beneath the surface of the thermal pool. The lioness's powerful legs carried her toward the water's edge, but her savanna-evolved instincts rebelled against entering the alien environment where the anaconda held every advantage. From his position high in the forest, Bakari heard Tendai's weakening cries and made a decision that would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about interspecies protection. The gentle giant who had spent years nurturing orphaned animals was about to face the ultimate test of his protective instincts. The lion pride's response to little Tendai's peril revealed the heartbreaking limitations that even apex predators faced when confronted with threats outside their evolutionary experience. Amali paced frantically along the thermal pool's rocky edge, her maternal instincts screaming at her to dive in and save her cub, while her survival programming warned that entering the water would likely result in her own death and leave the rest of her family without protection. Django's massive frame trembled with frustrated rage as he watched his youngest offspring disappearing beneath the anaconda's crushing coils. The powerful male's roars of fury echoed off the valley walls. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But his impressive strength meant nothing against a predator that ruled an environment where lions had no natural advantages. His claws, devastating weapons on solid ground, would be useless against scales designed to withstand the crushing pressures of deep river systems. The other Pride members formed a desperate semicircle around the thermal pool, their collective voices creating a chorus of anguish that seemed to shake the very foundations of the valley. But for all their combined power, generations of savanna evolution had not prepared them for aquatic rescue operations against one of South America's most formidable constrictors. High in the forest canopy, Bakari was experiencing his own internal battle as Tendai's weakening cries reached his sensitive ears. Every fiber of the silverback's being was calibrated for protection. Years of serving as guardian to countless orphaned animals had developed within him an almost compulsive need to intervene when vulnerable creatures faced mortal danger. But entering thermal water to fight an anaconda violated every survival instinct that had kept him alive through decades of sanctuary life. Yet as Bakari watched the tiny cub's struggles growing weaker, something deeper than self-preservation took control of his massive frame. The same protective fury that had driven him to shield countless orphans from leopards, poachers, and disease now focused with laser intensity on the serpent that threatened this innocent life. His powerful fists clenched as he made a decision that would forever change the relationship between species in the Kisangani Reserve. Bakari's descent from the forest canopy toward the thermal pools was unlike anything ever documented in primate behavior research. The massive silverback moved through the trees with surprising speed, his 450-pound frame navigating branches and vines with the urgency of a creature driven by something far more powerful than self-preservation. His route took him along the natural pathways he had learned during years of protecting the sanctuary's most vulnerable residents. But this time, his destination was a confrontation that challenged every assumption about gorilla behavior. What made Bakari's approach extraordinary was his apparent understanding of the tactical challenge he faced. Instead of the direct assault that might be expected from a panicked animal, the silverback demonstrated strategic thinking that suggested years of experience dealing with predatory threats. He positioned himself to approach the thermal pool from the angle that would give him maximum advantage, while minimizing the anaconda's ability to use the water as a defensive weapon. The lion pride's reaction to seeing the massive gorilla approaching their crisis was a mixture of hope and confusion that played out in their body language and vocalizations. Amali's roars shifted from pure anguish to something that sounded remarkably like encouragement, as if her maternal instincts recognized that this unlikely ally represented her cub's only chance of survival. Django and the other Pride members instinctively moved to create space for Bakari's intervention, their predatory intelligence somehow understanding that cooperation rather than territorial defensiveness offered the best hope for little Tendai's rescue. This spontaneous coordination between natural competitors would have fascinated wildlife behaviorists, but in the moment it represented the first step in an alliance that would soon challenge every rule of interspecies relationships. From observation points throughout the valley, other sanctuary residents began gathering to witness the unprecedented drama unfolding at the thermal pools. Elephants, antelopes, and various primate species positioned themselves at safe distances, their collective presence creating an audience for what promised to be either a miraculous rescue or a tragedy that would reshape the reserve's careful balance of displaced wildlife. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only Bakari's courage, but the very foundations of natural behavior in a world where survival had already required the impossible. Bakari's entry into the thermal pool was a calculated plunge that defied every natural law governing gorilla behavior around deep water. The massive silverback launched himself from the rocky edge with surprising grace, his powerful frame cutting through the warm water like a living torpedo aimed directly at the anaconda's vulnerable midsection. His years of experience protecting smaller animals had taught him that successful rescues required speed, precision, and the willingness to accept personal risk for the sake of innocent lives. The impact when Bakari struck the anaconda was thunderous, sending waves across the thermal pool and momentarily disrupting the serpent's deadly grip on little Tendai. The gorilla's massive hands found purchase on the snake's thick body, his fingers digging deep into the muscular coils with a strength that few creatures on Earth could match. His strategy was immediately apparent. Rather than attempting to fight the entire snake, he focused his assault on the specific sections maintaining the killing grip around the cub. The anaconda's response revealed the intelligence that made these serpents such formidable predators. Instead of releasing its prey to deal with this new threat, the snake attempted to incorporate Bakari into its constricting embrace, seeking to crush both victims simultaneously. But the gorilla had anticipated this tactic, using his superior reach and climbing abilities to maintain positions where the snake's coils couldn't effectively encircle him. What followed was the most extraordinary display of interspecies cooperation ever documented in wildlife research. As Bakari struggled with the anaconda's powerful body, Amali made a decision that challenged every assumption about lion behavior. The lioness entered the thermal pool despite her species' natural aversion to deep water, positioning herself to assist in Little Tendai's rescue rather than leaving the task entirely to the gorilla. The sight of gorilla and lioness working together against a common threat created a moment of unprecedented alliance that seemed to electrify every witness in the valley. Their coordinated efforts, Bakari's strength combined with Amali's maternal desperation, created a force that the anaconda had never encountered in its evolutionary experience. The battle in the thermal pool reached its crescendo when Bakari executed a maneuver that demonstrated the full extent of his intelligence and protective fury. The silverback managed to position himself where he could grip the anaconda's head with one massive hand, while using his other arm to systematically pry the serpent's coils away from Little Tendai's increasingly still form. His understanding of leverage and anatomy, developed through years of gentle interaction with countless animals, now served him in the most violent confrontation of his life. Amali's contribution proved equally crucial as she used her powerful jaws to grip sections of the anaconda's body, preventing the snake from repositioning its coils to regain crushing advantage. The lioness's natural hunting instincts, evolved for taking down large prey, provided the precise knowledge of where to apply pressure to maximize the disruption of the serpent's constricting power. The critical moment came when their combined efforts created enough loosening in the anaconda's grip for Little Tendai to draw his first full breath in several terrifying minutes. The young cub's weak mew of relief seemed to galvanize both rescuers, giving them the strength needed for the final phase of their desperate battle. But it was Bakari's tactical brilliance that ultimately secured victory. The gorilla managed to grab the anaconda behind its skull and systematically stretch the serpent's body beyond its ability to maintain effective constriction. Using the thermal pool's rocky edges as leverage points, he created a situation where the snake's own massive weight worked against its muscular power. The anaconda, recognizing that this battle had become too costly to continue, began the process of disengagement. The ancient predator's survival instincts, honed over millions of years, finally overcame its desire to complete the kill. With fluid grace that belied its enormous size, the serpent released its remaining grip on Tendai and began retreating toward the deeper channels that connected to the underground river system. As the last ripples of the anaconda's departure settled across the thermal pool, an extraordinary silence fell over the valley. Little Tendai floated weakly but alive in the warm water, while Bakari and Amali positioned themselves protectively around the rescued cub. The immediate aftermath of Little Tendai's rescue created a scene that challenged every assumption about natural hierarchies and territorial behavior. Bakari gently carried the weak cub to the thermal pool's shallow edge, his massive hands cradling the tiny lion with the same delicate care he had shown to countless orphaned animals throughout his years at the sanctuary. The silverback's protective instincts seemed to extend seamlessly to this newest member of his expanding family of rescued creatures. But what happened next would forever change the relationship between species in the Kisangani Reserve. As Bakari prepared to return Tendai to his pride, Amali approached the gorilla with movements that spoke to emotions far deeper than simple gratitude. The lioness, still dripping with thermal water, lowered her massive head in what could only be interpreted as a gesture of profound respect and acknowledgement. What followed was the most extraordinary display of interspecies communication ever documented in wildlife research. One by one, the entire lion pride approached Bakari, each member offering their own version of what appeared to be formal recognition of his heroism. Django, the powerful pride leader, actually touched his nose to the gorilla's knuckles, a gesture that transcended every boundary of territory, hierarchy, and evolutionary programming. The pride's collective decision was unprecedented in the annals of wildlife behavior. Rather than retreating to their traditional territory after the rescue, the lions positioned themselves in a protective formation around Bakari, as if formally adopting the silverback into their family structure. Their body language suggested permanent alliance rather than temporary cooperation, creating a multi-species pride that defied every rule of natural organization. Little Tendai, recovering his strength with remarkable resilience, seemed to understand instinctively that his survival was due to this gentle giant's intervention. The young cub's playful attempts to climb on Bakari's massive frame were met with patient tolerance that suggested the beginning of a bond that would last a lifetime. From observation points throughout the valley, sanctuary staff watched in amazement as an entirely new form of family structure emerged from the thermal pool rescue, a pride that included both lion and gorilla, united by courage, gratitude, and the unbreakable bonds forged in moments of life and death crisis. The story of Bakari's heroic rescue and the lion pride's unprecedented response became a cornerstone in wildlife behavior research, fundamentally changing how scientists understood the capacity for gratitude, recognition, and family bonds in the animal kingdom. Footage from the Kisangani Reserve security cameras documented every moment of the extraordinary alliance, providing evidence that challenged decades of established theory about interspecies relationships and territorial behavior. The gorilla-lion pride that emerged from that thermal pool rescue continued to thrive, creating a new model of family structure that transcended every biological boundary. Little Tendai grew into a powerful young lion under the dual protection of his birth pride and his adoptive gorilla guardian, while Bakari found renewed purpose in his role as protector of this expanded family unit. Wildlife rehabilitation centers worldwide began restructuring their programs based on the Kisangani model, recognizing that animals forced to adapt to artificial environments could form bonds impossible in natural settings. The success of Bakari's multi-species pride inspired new approaches to conservation that emphasized cooperation over competition, alliance over territorial division. Most profoundly, the story reminded humanity that heroism exists throughout the natural world, waiting to emerge when courage overcomes the boundaries that seem to divide us. Bakari's willingness to risk everything for a creature outside his species demonstrated that compassion transcends evolutionary programming, while the pride's grateful response proved that recognition of nobility exists far beyond human consciousness. The Kisangani Reserve remains home to this extraordinary family, their daily interactions providing ongoing research into the depths of animal emotion and intelligence. Researchers continue to document behaviors that challenge fundamental assumptions about loyalty, gratitude, and the capacity for love that connects all conscious beings. In the volcanic highlands where forest meets river, where the impossible has become routine, their legacy continues to inspire a new understanding of what it means to be family. Their story proves that the bonds forged in moments of crisis can transcend any barrier that nature or circumstance places in their path, creating connections stronger than blood, deeper than instinct, and more lasting than time itself. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.